Hi, everyone. Hi, Lauren. How are you? Can you hear me okay? I'm just setting up here, getting ready to go live. Oh, wonderful. I have a new microphone. I'm so excited. A company called, I don't know, what were they? Zill Sound? Wait. A company called, I'll tell you in a minute. Yeah, Zill Sound sent me a new microphone for my Xbox to use when I read this. And I was so surprised. And so I'm giving a shout out to Zill Sound. They sent me the Xbox microphone B as in boy, D as in David 9. And this is going to be my first read using it, and I hope it sounds a lot clearer than my mic. My headset mic. They told me in their message, we can make you sound even better. So I'm like, okay, awesome, thank you. So I guess that kind of makes them a little bit of a sponsor, maybe. So I'm very appreciative of that. So we are at the 2 o'clock hour and ready to begin. So let me share with you where I am right now. I'm in another one of my houses. This one is a Bosmere, or what's called a wood elf house, and it's called Bosmere Hand Fasting. And this one has been in a couple of contests and even won first place for being so authentically a wood elf. So I'm just going to come over here. So can you imagine going to a wood elf wedding? Okay, well, this is where maybe the ceremony would take place. So let me turn around and face you, and then I'll take a seat and we will begin our time. Let's see where. Oh, I went past it. Nope, that's not it. This is it. This is what I want. So I'm going to have a seat. So last week we read the first 3 chapters, and we are sitting in a pub, if you remember, and our protagonist is going into a little bit of a daydream, taking us back in time. Taking us back in time. Her name is Vivian McFarland. And here we go. Page 23. Then May morn. First light edged the horizon. Stars still twinkled in the sky. A waning silver of a crescent moon with dog star rose beautifully in the eastern sky. The farm animals, still asleep, were not bothered as Vivian tiptoed barefoot across the rocky driveway. The freshly mowed grass felt cool against the bottom of her feet as she stepped into the small fenced-in garden. Vivian glanced back at the sleepy dwelling from where she'd come and smiled. Hounslow House, a 200-year-old farmhouse, sat nestled on 88 acres of rolling hills, surrounded by several ancient sites that were untouched by modern grave diggers. Vivian felt the presence of the fairy here, believing the house to be on a fairy haunt long before Cian had pointed out the mound. "If it is a mound," he said, "and I think it is." "It looks like one," said Vivian. "Then it's even larger than Newgrange, and quite possibly the largest in Ireland." The ruins of an ancient abbey an imposing structure with square towers and loophole windows that resembled a castle rather than an abbey, lay to the southwest of the mound. The town of Four sat nestled in the bosom of the surrounding hills. It had its own local tradition and was known for the 7 wonders in Four: water, which would not boil; wood, which would not burn; water flowing uphill; the abbey built on quaking sod; a mill without a race; miraculous emplacement of the large lintel stone above the door; and St. Fechin's finger marks on the lintel stone. Vivian turned in the direction of the mound and abbey, wondering if St. Fechin's ghost wandered the lonely abbey grounds. The image of the saint, a native of Sligo, wandering in search of his Christendom, his lost community of 300 monks that he had so long ago founded in the mid-1st century, brought a tear to Vivian's eye. Even the saint deserved recognition. He had probably been an Olaf at one time, or maybe a Druid who had surrendered to the new ways of the world. His faith must have been strong in the powers of nature that he must have explored and taken part in, and witness surely would have been great. Vivian mentally recited the prayer to the saints of Ireland and felt a tug at her heart. O God, who didst deign to people our land with innumerable saints, and to make it illustrious amongst all the nations of the world for the zeal of its apostles, the fortitude of its martyrs, the constancy of its confessors, and the shining purity of its holy women, give us the grace of devotion to all the saints of Ireland, that we may be inspired by their example to lead lives worthy of the noble transitions which they had handed down from generation unto generation. The noble traditions handed down, she said to the row of holly trees before her. Looking up to the stars, she whispered, endow me with the priceless gift of faith, and provide me in abundance with heavenly help to deepen my sanctity and intensify my love for thee, O Donna. To have lived back when St. Fechin did in a green heaven, at a time when the world of fairy and men were not so far apart. Ah, but didn't a touch of the fairy still linger in the atmosphere here? Vivian flung her arms open, letting her hair fall back, her full curly hair cascading like a waterfall. She stood betwixt and between her realm and that of the fairy as the first light eased lustily over the curve of the land and brought with it an electrical charge. The hills seemed to echo with the sound of drums beating to the melody of distant pipes. Vivian thought she saw the faint glimmer of firelight sparkling into vision on top of the distant hill. And the fire thou shalt kindle will ever burn bright, its heat undiminished, undenying the light, Vivian chanted softly to the vision. But when she blinked and strained to see it more clearly, there was only shadow. Remembering why she had come to the garden, Vivian gathered the hem of her nightgown in one hand and prepared to receive the glamour of the Fairy Queen. Each year she did this by washing her face with the dew of May morn, an old faith folk custom. Vivian twirled in the darkness. She danced about the garden, bending here and there, passing her hands over the grass to collect the dew on them, to smooth over her face, neck, arms, and legs. As the ritual unfolded, she sang, her voice echoing like a beating heart. Queen Fay, bless me this day with the dew of eternal youth and beauty. Faery-Chronicle entry 1.444.1. The outline of the ash trees took on the shape of sentries, and the holly shone a soft iridescent that only those trained in the second sight could perceive. Through the veil the shapes of the immortals slipped, joining her dance. Vivian twirled round and round just like a young girl. A shiver ran through her and she came to a stop. She looked to the distant hill, a rolling, undulating hill whose summit promised a wonderful view of the surrounding little valley. There, on the summit, where earlier she thought she had spied a flickering fire, stood a host of fairy. For who else could they be? She almost asked out loud. As if turned into a statue, Vivian stood still as stone, hardly breathing, the only movement a wisp of hair caught in the sudden gentle breeze that blew down from the low grassy hill. A calm tranquillity settled around her, the sleeping farm, the entire countryside, it seemed, and with it Vivian could hear the distinct sound of a far-off string gurgling in the course, a sound she ought not to be able to hear. But it came low and continuous, as if lifted from the coverage of conifers and ash and willow trees crowded so closely together that the sound of the running water was usually limited to the immediate proximity of. The longer she listened, the louder it grew, followed by the underlining strains of human speech. At first that of a low humming, rising a note above the lyrical water, then growing more audible until at last the other world words swarmed around her. Everything is in order, the mystic has begun. And with those words the spell of stone was broken. Vivian's eyes sharply focused on our images, the only unmoving part of her body. She gulped at the air, and the hair on the nape of her neck instinctively rose. She drew her shoulders up toward her ears and hugged herself as if suddenly cold. Our world of fairy surrounded her. The scent of violets wafted through the air. Her mind was drawn to the farmhouse and the sleeping bodies within. Bless them, my queen, with your glamour, Vivian whispered. Then turning her back, she sprang away, darting through the garden, dodging the dancing gossamer filigree bodies of Light, the lesser fairy, who had come to give support to nature, to Vivian's ceremony, but to which she was unaware. As Vivian left the garden fence, she paused one last time to take in our silhouettes. I know that she was beginning to understand that her world had been changed, and I did hope that she would still find solace in it. For we fairy are known to ruin a human's life by just our mere presence. Vivian tiptoed across the rocky drive. Her feet felt numb and aching as sharp points bit into her flesh. The front door into the foyer squeaked open and closed. She tiptoed up the stairs and opened the door to her room. The shock of the lime green and purple interior hit her as it always did when she entered. The Irish had some wonderful ways, but interior decoration wasn't always one of them. At least the linen on the bed was of fine quality, she thought, as she sat upon it and brushed the grass from her feet, which stung to the touch. Vivian massaged peppermint oil into her skin before sliding under the covers. She glanced at the clock as she settled under the down comforter. 5:15. Was it all a dream? She wondered. Drifting off, the sound of someone stirring in the house registered. She listened and heard steps moving down the stairs and out a back door. But she closed her eyes to the sound and the curiosity of who it might be and fell into a deep sleep. Faery-Chronicler entry 1.444.2. The sun continued to rise into a cloudless blue sky, and the great fire of the sky took the fairy flame from the hilltop blaze as a red foal was born to a lovely white mare on the farm. The host on the hill revelled. The new foal signalled that Macha had made her presence back into Ireland, and for the first time in over 9 generations the men of Ulster would not have felt birth pangs at the advance of invading troops. Since Ireland was not being invaded, the Ulstermen slept sound in their province. Okay, there's a chapter down for you. Hi, Dawn. It's good to see you. I hope you're enjoying. I just read about your namesake, Macha. So I'm happy to see you here. It's nice. Taking a little swig of water, and then I'll continue on with the next chapter. I'm wondering, Dawn, did you happen to go visit Hounslow House when we went on sacred pilgrimage to Ireland? Okay, here we go. Continuing. Hill of Ishnach. The sacred centre of Ireland has always been known as County Meath. The heart of County Meath, though much debated, Cian knew, as all bards, ovates, and druids did, was the hill of Ishnach, where the ancient assembly of the 5 chief druids once met annually at Beltane, the first day of May. In all of Ireland, this province was Cian's favourite, especially Westmeath, situated smack dab in the centre of the island. Sure, it had no majestic mountain ranges or alluring seaside port, but here Cian found calm and tranquil scenery, a unique landscape. The northern part of the county was Drumlin Country, a rolling, undulating land with numerous low grassy hills, and between them one could find numerous lakes whose shores were clothed with deciduous trees and multi-flowered undergrowth. The central and southern parts of the county were flatter, but with numerous lakes and lots of bogs. Cian loved bogland, large tracts of peat untouched by modern technology. When he needed to find a real feeling of peace or inner healing, he would walk into the heart of Glenwood Bog. There he would stand still on the carpet of sphagnum moss and bog cotton and listen to the sounds of silence. The only disturbance was the occasional music of a grasshopper or the song of a lark overhead. When Cian had returned to Ireland for good, he chose Meath, the royal county, because of its dramatic heritage and proud history. For over 8,000 years, man had settled here, and everywhere one turned they could see surviving monuments and relics scattered profusely beside the rolling rivers and on the lush plains. Even the invaded Normans had loved it, and rather than cause ruin as Cromwell had, they embraced it and left the landscape dotted with their imposing fortresses. But it was here that the ancient roads of Ireland radiated, spreading royal Meath's influence and affluence to all corners of the island. It was here that the Irish magic and legends of the past entwined into a fabric that continued to live for centuries. When Cian learned that Vivian wanted to bring the pilgrimage to the hill of Ishnok, he knew that she understood. His heart leapt at the opportunity to share the power of the giant stone once called Al Namurin, or Stone of the Divisions, now locally referred to as the Cat Stone. He would be able to share the power of the seat of the chief druids. He leaned against a street pole, waiting to be picked up on the triangular green in Castle Pollard, the historic village of Four, and the village where he lived. Above his head rose a white sign that read Mullingar Road. He reached up and gave it a twang, then reached inside his coat pocket to pull out his cigarette tin. Popping off the lid, he removed one that was already rolled and stuck it in his mouth. Glancing down, he counted the remaining fags, took a quick inventory of loose tobacco and reserve of papers before shutting the tin and slipping it down inside his pocket. Cian had not yet admitted to anyone, except finally himself, that he might be in love with Vivian. He lit the cigarette, drawing in the smoke, and exhaled long and slow. In fact, just the day before, he had noticed a pattern in how she responded to him. Whenever he felt feelings rise, and especially in the presence of the others, Vivian would immediately tease him in a most challenging way, enough to make him squirm, almost as if she knew what he was feeling, almost as if she were intentionally trying to torture him. "Who is she?" "Bollocks! Knock it off, man," he grumbled, shaking Vivian off and forcing his mind to Marcella, Steve's wife, a little Alabama peach long. Oh, this happens sometimes. I guess I sat idle for too long because the game just booted me. All right, let me come over here and take another position. We'll come over here into the grove of the Lord and the Lady. Okay. And I'll have a seat over here for a minute. Maybe I should just stand for a minute. Sorry about that, everyone. That is called an ESO boot, or someone uh, listened in and went, no, 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 you don't get to read while you're in here. But it only helps to promote this lovely game that I so love. Where were we? Oh my gosh, let me look. Let's see. Kian was kicking his mind off of Vivian, and he was forcing it onto Marcella, Steve's wife, who he thought was a little Alabama peach with long brown hair that was always worn in a braid, just like his wife Cindy. Yep, he liked that about Marcella, and her nice dark blue eyes, serious kind of weepy eyes. She was funny too, had a great sense of humor. God, she'd have to be being married to a guy like Steve. Steve and Marcella, now that was a combination. Who would have ever thought the two of them would be a couple? Obviously, this was a marriage for money, not love. I mean, Steve was very wealthy, a real little Richie Rich. Kian laughed, picturing Steve as a little kid wearing knee-high socks and shorts with button suspenders. What did they call that style of shorts? Hell if he knew. Kian shook his head, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, but Marcella had an eye for him. He was sure of it. He'd caught her staring at him several times yesterday, that dreamy look in her eyes, fantasizing probably. She would be a good distraction, as good as any. And he needed the distraction, otherwise he was going to get himself into trouble. Bullocks, he swore again, flicking the cigarette butt into the street. The honk of a horn brought his attention to the opposite road leading into the village. Kian waved as he recognized Joe behind the steering wheel. Joe guided the white coach to a stop before Kian had leaned out the window. "Ya need a ride now, do ya?" Joe teased. "You get," said Kian, climbing into the front passenger seat. "Look what we've picked us up," Joe threw over his shoulder to the group. "A traveler." "I'll travel you," Kian popped Joe on the head, then turned and faced the group. "Top of the day to you all, and isn't it a lovely May morn?" A chorus of good morning and yes echoed throughout the coach. Kian smiled at Vivian into those green eyes, and for the second time that morning he felt his heart race. He wanted to take her in his arms and taste those lips, feel her tongue in his mouth, and how are you?" he asked her instead. "I couldn't be better," she said, smiling. "It's going to be a gorgeous day. I mean, look at this weather." "Only in Ireland," Joe interrupted. "Only in Ireland. We're to this fine Irish morning." "To the hill of Ishnock, my good man," Kian instructed, feeling good. "I brought sunscreen," announced Steve, to which everyone laughed. The white coach, filled with the chatter of the group, ambled out of Castle Pollard on the Mullingull Road and traveled through the pleasant countryside. Eventually, the group fell silent. "One of the most majestic lakes in all of Westmeath is coming up on our right," announced Kian. "A very famous legend is connected with it. One of my favorite legends, I might add. Anyone know which one?" He looked to Vivian. "Loch Derivara," she mouthed. Kian smiled and nodded. "Anyone know?" he asked, turning to the others. "How about you, Carla? Surely you know." Carla glared at him, the annoyance showing on her face. "Give us a hint," said Marcella, taking the uncomfortable attention off Carla. She sat forward on her seat and rested her arms and chin on the backrest in front of her, in which Rose and Kat sat. Rose positioned her back against the window so she faced the interior of the coach, a huge smile on her face. Aw, come on! You have to give us a hint, urged Marcella, pulling her long brown braid over her right shoulder. The woman's eyes flicked off Kian's image to briefly acknowledge Vivian's response before jumping back, every inch of her focused on him. Steve, was oblivious to his wife's new interest. He sat with his nose in a travel guide, searching for the correct answer. In the seat behind him sat Ellen and Ken. Ken's eyes were on Vivian. He wore earphones plugged into a portable CD player and smiled, raising his eyebrows at Vivian when she glanced his way. Ken saw the exchange and grew annoyed and forced his attention onto Ellen, who appeared tired. She sat quietly, looking out the window, watching the rolling grassland slip by. All right, Ken said, bringing Vivian's attention back to him. Loch Derivara is associated with the most tragic of all Irish legendary romances. I thought there were 3, whined Rose, who thought of herself as a bit of a scholar. There are 3 sorrowful tales of Ireland, yes, and all 3 are romances, said Vivian. Very good, said Cian, nodding. Well, it isn't the sons of Ishna, said Carla. That's the hill of Ishnach. Or Deirdre and Nacy, added Donna. I know that one is connected to Tara. So what's the last one? Asked Cian. Then it must be the children of Lear, said Marcella. Yes, Cian gave Marcella a warm smile and turned toward the window. And there it is now. Every face in the bus turned to take in the wooded shores of the lake, set against a backdrop of rolling hills, and marveled at the beauty of the place. Cian turned to Vivian, motioning her to him. Should we have a Kodak moment? He asked. On the way back, Vivian sat back in her seat as Cian informed the group that they had stopped for pictures on their way back at the end of the day. Would you tell us the Children of Lear legend? Asked Marcella. Cian glanced at Vivian, who shrugged. He turned in his seat again to fully face the pilgrims and began his telling of the myth, easing the passage of time and space. At mid-morning they arrived at Ishnach. The imposing flat-topped hill rose on the right, surrounded by cow pasture, and from the road it was difficult to see that the hill had 2 summits. On the eastern summit was a group of ancient remains, and on the western was found overgrowing ring forts and souterrains beneath tumuli. The bus pulled off to the side of the road near a large wooden plaque for the hill. They were on the southern slope of the hill, the side on which rested the Cat's Stone. Only the tip of it could be seen above the tops of the oak trees that edged the base of the hill. The small group clambered out of the bus and was met by a gentle breeze blowing from the west, promising a lovely day. All eyes were focused on the hill, taking in the beauty. Some realized that they were standing on sacred ground, the ancient festival site of Beltane, where at one time a fair lasting 15 days was held. Here was a place where ancient society had been conducted, where the clanspeople from near and far had gathered each year to celebrate, a place where Mediterranean traders were known to attend and barter silks and spices of the East for Irish tools. This was the place where King Tuathal Techtmar erected his royal palace, where the 5 chief druids gathered to hold commerce. This was a place of great history, tradition, and power. Cian stood back, watching the look of awe on their faces before moving next to Vivian, who stood apart from the small group, her face turned toward the road leading on. She looked up as he leaned close to her. "I'll move up to the stone to secure the site," Cian said, "and make sure no bulls are about today." Vivian smiled. Today she needed him, required his total support to make it possible for her to open her senses wide open, expose herself to the land, the forces of this sacred center. She needed him because today he knew Vivian would become vulnerable to the fairy, and he was going to be sure she could do so without any fear or the remotest concern over not being protected from unwanted energies, or worse, being attacked by dark droi from the other world. He knew about them, but wasn't sure. She did. Cian looked into Vivian's eyes, searching for a hint of confirmation that she felt the same. She smiled and returned his gaze, and Cian felt a flicker of something. That was all he needed, for now at least. He straightened and glanced over her shoulder. "I'll meet you up at the stone then," he said, turning with forked hazel staff in hand. Cian crossed the road and made his way up the hill. Vivian watched Cian disappear between the trees, where a sparkling web of light swallowed him. Faery-Chronicle entry 1.555.1. King Medir, his queen Edain, and our hosts stood obscured behind that web of sparkles, though none of the mortals suspected us being there. We watched as the uncommonly stoic pilgrims gathered their belongings off the bus. It had been hundreds of years since a mortal priestess and priest worked the weird of our hollow hill. I was there as the witness, waiting and wondering whether or not Lugh would bring the earthlight to the woman. That is, if she proved worthy. When the voice of Maka came on the soft breeze, announcing, "At all costs, the little priestess and her priest are to receive the gift of crystal fire." This made all of our hosts take notice. Well, what about that? Let me look at my chat. "Oh, we didn't visit there, Dawn." Okay, well, that's too bad. Hansel House is gorgeous countryside. So for those of you listening, this is actually based on a real pilgrimage. Everything happened on that pilgrimage. I'm just simply reiterating the story, and of course in a fantasy way. But yeah. Oh, what a fond memory I have of that day. Here's where the wedding couple would be sitting eating their feast. I guess I'll sit up here and read our next chapter, which I do believe we have time for another chapter. Okay. This is where things get weird. A stranger among them. Okay, let me get a nice view here. Okay, there you go. Toting a picnic lunch and other items in hand, the covey of 12 began climbing the hill, following the footsteps of Cian. Golden yellow blossomed firs crowned the first crest. Vivian halted just below the bush. "Okay," she said, turning to the group and straightened, a shocked expression on her face. A stranger stood among them. "I've just come from the cave over by the hollow mound," the stranger said, his eyes a bright blue. His voice startled the others, drawing their attention to him. No one had seen him join their group, yet there he stood, right in the middle of them, uniquely dressed in gray spandex shorts and a nondescript t-shirt. He held a brown bag of groceries cradled in his arms. A true Celtic man, Vivian thought, coming face to face with him. He wore his red hair pulled back in a tail. A slight growth of beard edged his chin, which was more a 4 o'clock shadow than grown intentionally. The uncommon sunshine had already kissed his fair skin rosy pink. Who he was of no consequence to Vivian, and in the blink of an eye, for the second time that day, she grasped onto the fact that her life was changing, that this man standing before her was to change who she was. "I've come from the cave over by the hollowed mound," he was saying, "but they've blocked the entrance with stones, making it impossible to enter." Steve and Joe joined the group after having lagged behind to lock up the coach. The two men carried the last of the picnic supplies. "What's holding us up?" Steve grumbled to Joe, then noticed the stranger. "Who's that?" he whispered to his wife. "He just suddenly joined us," answered Marcella. "You should have been here yesterday," the man said to Vivian. "How much farther?" interrupted Steve. The man glanced at Steve before returning his gaze to Vivian. Right," Vivian mumbled. "Joe, perhaps you and Steve can take the picnic items up to that little grove over there." Everyone turned to where Vivian pointed. With a nod of his head, Joe headed off. Steve followed, glancing back at the stranger. "That's actually where we're all going," said Vivian, realizing the other pilgrims were waiting on her. With a wave of her hand and a nod of her head, the others shuffled off. She watched them for a bit before turning her attention back to the stranger. "Why?" she asked, as if there had been no interruption. "The other Matthew was here doing ceremony." "The other Matthew," she stressed. "I don't even know who the first Matthew is." "Oh," he said, wearing a grin. "Are you a bunch of New Agers?" "Hardly," Vivian snapped, feeling agitated, which irritated her. She glanced up the hill, searching for Cian. "Let's go up to the crest and unpack," she said, turning her back on the stranger, who grinned all the more. They walked in silence, soon arriving at the small grove of rowan trees where the others waited. Steve and Joe sat on a large cluster of boulders outside the grove of trees. The boxes of picnic food sat on the ground. The others stood scattered about. Cian was nowhere to be seen. This is where we'll store our belongings until after the ceremony," Vivian said, coming to a stop. "I'd like you to wait here with Carla. She'll help you get ready." Carla nodded. "Okay, everyone. You'll want to get out your heartstone, of course, your sacred scarf, and if you're giving an offering to Goddess, take some of the flowers." Carla held out a bunch of red carnations with some white roses mixed in. Here's the chocolate if anyone wants to give the fairy an offering. Vivian listened to Carla's instructions, aware that the stranger trailed after her. She made her way around the small rowan grove and came to the mound of the cat stone. Pausing, she scanned the area for Kian before making her way down the rim of the mound into an indentation in the ground. She stopped before the massive stone. The stranger positioned himself on the eastern lip of the mound. "What'll you be doing?" he asked. "Ceremony," she said a bit sarcastically. "You're not New Agers." "No." "Pagan?" "Yes," Vivian snapped, "and our ceremony is very serious and important." "I'd like to watch if you don't mind." Vivian searched for Kian. "Well, I do mind. This is a very intimate ceremony, and I don't know how the group would feel. They've come a long way to do this ceremony." "Where's everyone from?" he asked, ignoring her sarcasm. "California, Idaho, Alabama, New Zealand," she listed, returning to her work. She unfolded a green silk scarf and laid it on the grass. On this she posted a smudge stick made of cedar, lavender, and sage, along with a white votive candle in a silver candle holder, and a large sphere of hematite, which shone in the sunlight. Sweat beaded Vivian's upper lip. She glanced over her shoulder at the man, his eyes intently on her. When he smiled, Vivian turned her back on him, feeling disgusted at herself for allowing his presence to make her feel insecure. Shielding her eyes with a hand, she again searched the hill for Kian. Growing desperate to find him, the stranger stood and gazed in the direction Vivian looked. "Excuse me," Vivian said, putting on her most impersonal smile and turning back to the man. "I need to prepare the others." The stranger nodded, and for the first time Vivian realized that his eyes did not seem to focus on one thing, but looked blurred, if that was possible. "Well, then," she said, giving an abrupt nod of her head and lowering her hand from her eyes. She left him to go back to the group. Again she scanned the area, becoming irritated with Kian's absence and a bit frantic that she couldn't find him, but as if on cue, he stepped out from behind the far side of the small grove of rowan and made his way to her. "Finally!" she sighed, her agitation lifting. She gave her full attention to the pilgrims. "Everyone, listen up. Get everything together." "They're ready to go," responded Carla, sharpness to her words. Vivian smiled. "Yes, of course they are." It's all clear," Kian said as he came to Vivian's side, "but we may not be able to go up the hill because of the bulls." "Ah, the bulls won't bother us," Vivian snapped. "Oh, look," she said, softening as confusion and anger washed across Kian's face. "There's this guy up there, and he wants to watch the ceremony. I don't feel comfortable with that." Kian snapped to attention. "Someone's up there?" he asked. Vivian nodded. "I need a change of scenery." I know, isn't this disruptive? Oh, it is, Kismet, so disruptive. Oh, but I don't care. It is what it is. I don't want to get booted. I don't want to get booted. Plus, you're sitting in my story time circle. "Right." Kian almost saluted Vivian, but stopped himself from doing so just in time. "I'll take care of him. In full command, he turned and made his way to the catstone. He spotted the man standing on the lip of the mound, turned in his direction, as if the stranger had been expecting Cian. "Greetings," the stranger said. "Right," said Cian. Look, this group of tourists are from America, and they want to do a bit of ceremony here, but they feel a bit uncomfortable with you here." The stranger smiled and glanced in Vivian's direction. "She would do that," he said. Cian stepped closer. "Come again?" "I'm a traveling bard. I've been camping here for a few weeks, up there in the ash line," he said, pointing to the ridge of trees above. "I was on my way to camp when I ran into your group. I went into town and got some food." He pointed to the bag at his feet. Cian nodded, studying the man. "So I'll be off," he said, and bent to pick up his bag. That's a good man," said Cian. The bard turned and began the hill's ascent. Wait, Cian called after him. The stranger stopped and turned. Is there a stream up there?" Cian asked. "Yeah. I'd like to see it, if you don't mind." The stranger nodded. "Wait here a second," Cian said. "I'll be right back." Cian went in search of Vivian and found her where he had left her. "Look," he told her, "the guy's a bard. He's been living on the hill for a few weeks. I've told him he can't watch the ceremony, so I'm going to walk with him to his camp to see the stream." Fine, Vivian said. "Tell him he's welcome to join us for the feast, the picnic." Cian cocked his head and squinted at Vivian. Without explaining, she shook her head and shrugged. "Right," said Cian. I'm just going to go to his camp then. Do you have an empty container with a lid on it?" "What?" Vivian asked. "An empty container with a lid? Do we have one I can use?" "I don't know. Carla, is there an empty container with a lid that Cian can have?" "No, sorry, all out of containers with lids today," responded Carla with a smirk. Cian shrugged, turned, and went back to the stranger. Vivian watched him disappear behind the grove of trees. She cocked her head and peered at Carla, wondering why Carla hated Cian. Power struggles. Jealousy always seems to cause them, and Vivian thought that Carla was jealous of the position of authority Vivian had given Cian. Vivian turned back to the pilgrims and looked at the expectant faces focused on her, poised for instruction. All except Steve, sunbathing on a large stone. Joe met her gaze and raised his eyebrows as if acknowledging Vivian's thoughts. He whistled through his teeth and chuckled. Joe, you're such a leprechaun," said Vivian. The others laughed. "Wait till y'all meet me uncle," Joe retorted. "Really? When?" asked Rose, taking the bait. "Soon enough," confirmed Joe, winking at Vivian. "Should I lead everyone in a meditation?" Carla asked Vivian, who nodded with a smile. Today my rhythm is off, I think. Okay, so here we are. We still have a few minutes left of this hour, but it gets pretty juicy. Honestly, it does. I don't think there's enough time to read the next chapter. I think I'll leave it for next time. Yeah, I think I'll leave it for next time. So, I hope you enjoyed today's chapters, and I hope you're enjoying this story. It's fun reliving it. It is fun reliving it, to say the least. Anybody have any questions out there in listening land? Let me show you the rest of the house while maybe while we're talking. Hey, if you come and have, if you come here, here's where the commoners sit, and here's the feast out here. And I gotta tell you something. These Bosmers, the wood elves, when an ancestor dies, they eat it. They're cannibals, but they eat it because they absorb their ancestors' wisdom into them. Isn't that kind of disgusting? Like that ancestor right there, he's whatever. I don't know what to tell you about their crazy ways. Remember, I'm a high elf, although I do have a wood elf. Maybe next week I'll bring on my wood elf so you can see my crazy little wood elf. If you're of royalty, etc., you get to come in here and eat, where it's nice and clean, and you have someone to wait on you and serve you. Okay, now let me show you where the hand fasting, aside from the ceremony, actually takes place. Right here, right in here, right there. There's the hand fasting where they become bonded with the hand fasting cord. Oh my God! And right there is their matrimonial bed, but we don't get to watch any of that. Were there really all of those personalities? Well, yeah, it was a pilgrimage, right? So each one of the people speaking were real. The couple was from Atlanta, Georgia. And the other couple, who is a little less active in this chapter, were from Australia, actually. Although she was originally from Ireland, he was originally from America, but she got a job with Mars Candy, and so they migrated to Australia for a few years. Rose was from Colorado. Unfortunately, she passed away. Donna was from right here in Orange County, and unfortunately, she passed away. Some people are no longer with us Earthside, so they get to continue to live on in Fairy with Teeth, which I guess that's kind of cool. So, and of course, Joe was the driver of the van, and Kian was the local Irish druid, a kind of tour guide, who got in the way more than he helped, but he helped. We're going out of the house into the broader world known as Green Shade. So I'll show you a glimpse of this. So you can see it. There's the broader world. What's so pretty. I'm on a collecting mission, so that's why you see, look at the lumber is right here. These are things I can turn on or off. Useful. Okay, and so yeah, every single person who was part of this chapter was actually there in real life, and even a few more that weren't voiced. I know my voicing is terrible, but I have fun doing it. And I do try to make them a little differently. But, it's kind of hard sometimes. Especially the male voices. Anyways. Thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate you. I have fun reading to you. I hope you're having like a glass of wine or a nice warm cup of tea, and you're all kicked back and feeling good and just daydreaming that you're part of the pilgrimage, maybe. And then I want to know which character you feel you are. You're so welcome. Bye, everyone. Talk to you soon. Take care and have a great rest of your Thursday. See you next week. Same time, same channel. Bye for now. Bye for now.